All right. Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. And welcome to returning guest
Mm.
Jay Poropatich, Town Communications Director, uh, who's here to educate us and I think have us educate him or just provide some good feedback about FlashVote or survey tools in general. Um, let's see. There might be a couple of people, Jay, that you don't know that are on. So we'll do our standard introductions real quick. Martin, I know you know Jay, but go ahead.
I have a yeah. This is an unusual one. Uh, we often say how long we've lived in Natick, and I was pulling this up, figuring the time has almost come, and yes, so Natick 70. We've been in Natick for 70 years. June 6th, 1956 is when our family moved into Natick. So I had thought about 70 years. Maybe I should do a program on how Natick's changed since
Yeah.
1956. I'm not in any particular shape right now to do anything, but maybe in a few weeks or a few months I can do that. So
That'd be
anyway,
awesome.
again,
That would be awesome.
so
Yeah, that'll be
70 years. I don't think I've broken the record. I think so. There's one person ahead of me here, but not too many.
I'm glad to have you here. Carol?
Hi, good morning. And I've lived in Natick over 50 years, and I live on Lake Cochituate. So I was very lucky to find this house, and I love my town. Thank you.
All right. Bill, not 50 years.
No, I'm a newbie. Maybe 12 years this summer. When I'm not cleaning up the party people at Pegan Cove, I am active on the Community Preservation Committee.
Thanks, Bill.
Welcome, Jay.
Brian, good to have you with us this morning.
34 years for me, and abutting Lake Cochituate. That's kind of my focus, water quality, and I work a lot with Pat with Keep Native Beautiful, and that's what I'd like to share this morning with the group and see if we can have some solutions.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Kathleen?
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Donovan, resident 36 years, so kind of in the middle of the range here. I'm on the Library Board of Trustees, and I also am active with Keep Native Beautiful.
Thanks, Kathleen. Carrie?
Hey, good morning, Jay. Good to see you again. I think you know most of me. Natick Rotary here. And let's see, Keep Native Beautiful Treasure. The Repair Cafe guy, and I do maintenance work for Family Promise, the Natick Affordable Housing Trust. I think I need some more coffee, and a few other places. Good to see you. Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Carrie. Lane?
Lane, I've lived in Natick, I think 37 years, and I'm back. I realized boycotting Coffee with a Purpose was not going to get them to change the acronym.
Uh, thanks, Lane. Cindy?
Morning. Thank you for coming, Jay. I'm coming up on 6-year resident in Natick this fall. I help keep Natick beautiful, and I'm a trail steward on the Takawambe Trail, and I sing in sound and spirit. And I love Natick.
Thanks, Cindy. Bianchi?
Good morning. And my name is Jean Monar, and I'm 26 years plus resident of Natick. And I participated in this flash vote almost a year ago, and I'm really curious, what's going on and how the town is using my information or our information to design the different projects. So thank you for organizing this today.
Thanks. Pat?
Good morning. Pat Conaway, Keep Natick Beautiful. Good to see you, Jay.
Thanks, Pat. Brindley?
Good morning. Thanks for being here, Jay. I'm a 26 this year resident, town meeting member, whatever, all that. I'm so glad you're here. Bye.
Thanks, Brindley. Catherine?
Oops.
We could hear you, but
Oh, okay. So, let's pretend I moved here yesterday and I'm a volunteer and a resident.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, we're a persona. Sarah?
Uh, Doug and I have been here 43 years at this point. In terms of stuff in town here, I'm a town meeting member, a community preservation member, and sort of pick up and do stuff here and there for various groups here in town.
And I'm Doug. I volunteer a lot with the Congregational Church and convene this group every Monday. So, Jay, thanks for being here. Uh, Interested to hear everything you got to tell us and engage with us about FlashVote or other survey tools, or for that matter, anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, thank you all. Um, so I'm Jay Poropatich. My job within Town Hall is communications director. So hopefully to keep residents mildly informed of various things going on. And then I often talk about being informed and then being engaged is like the next step, and then all the way to participating, which you could argue coffee with a purpose is fundamentally participating, a little bit beyond engaged. And so I've joined some of your sessions. I won't give you too much, about myself in the past. I'll kind of stay focused on FlashVote because I feel like there's one slide that shows you FlashVote alongside other ways of doing community engagement. I think that'll maybe branch us, but as much as possible, I'm going to show you some brief slides. I think it's 7 total slides in the deck, but only 4 of them have content. And then if the conversation just goes around back and forth, we can just stop there.
Hi
I can
there.
also,
I'm on Zoom this morning.
Sorry. Oh, I'm just going to mute Carol.
no worries.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
And then, yeah, if we're, need some assistance for more conversation, we can actually use the town's website and the survey webpage because it kind of plays itself out well to a presentation. But with that, I'm purposely not going to tell you how long I lived in Natick. I do live in Natick, but as I go through the flash vote, I'll talk about whether or not that matters in the context of flash vote.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, let me steal some presentation. I'm sure you set me up as a co-host.
You should be able to share the screen. Let me know if you can't.
Okay, 1 second. Don't know if I am set up, Doug.
Hang on a minute. Make you a co-host, which should definitely
There
get
it
you that
goes.
capability.
Yeah.
Technology is a beast.
Yeah.
Share. 1 brief second. All righty. You guys can see my screen, correct?
Yep.
Awesome. So Doug kind of referenced this in the setup, but my goal is just general conversation. I think just knowing a decent chunk of the folks on the call, I'm not going to do too much of the basics. I'll try to go a little bit deeper because I think there's a decent amount of familiarity, but I'll start a little bit high. And then Doug referenced, yeah, the idea of getting topics and feedback. You'd be surprised how hard it is to get survey topics. Today's June 8th. I'm probably going to do a survey in June. I have no idea what it is. I work across all the town departments to source them, as well as elected or appointed officials. But the goal of FlashVote is not just to do a survey for the sake of. I'm not I'm not generally asking you your favorite thing to do in town. I'm trying to figure out some informed action or at least series of an input that the town can leverage and use. So it's pretty intentional. Therefore, designing a survey is not any given task. It's those that I think that we have the capacity and sort of the prioritization aligned with that given survey. And we'll go deeper into that. So this is a busy slide, but I'm not going to speak to it verbatim. But at the highest level, FlashVote really is just a survey tool. Think of Google Form, a Survey Monkey, anything of that sort is just doing a quick survey. The beauty of FlashVote, and we can have this discussion, is kind of the key benefits on the bottom left. They're 5-question surveys. They're not in depth. We're not going to, understand deep insights. They're quick. They're short. One of the beauties is you actually register on the member panel, or you choose to participate anonymously and do not register on the survey panel. Either or. And feel free to like ask me questions as we're going along. But imagine the idea that you just get a link and you immediately receive the opportunity to submit 5 questions. If you're logged in as on the member panel, we store your age, gender, neighborhood, everything that you give us during the registration process. Or you can immediately just start taking the survey, the 5 questions anonymously. So all surveys kind of branch out in that way. The beauty of storing the member panel is kind of twofold. One, instead of each survey asking you the same question, where do you live? How, what neighborhood? What's your age? How long you've been in town? It's kind of like going on a first date in perpetuity. And this one stores, it's just like a Facebook profile. Here's my name, age, gender, where I live, and that's stored. And that allows us to cut the data and see the data across different demographics. It also allows us to store that member panel. So when we release a survey, we immediately start with a known group that we can communicate to. It's often hard to get volume. So that's one of the key benefits. And I'll get to the questions. The other key parts to mention is the idea that once you do the demographics and store the data, it allows you ultimately to not only analyze it, but also look at the panel versus the group that maybe comes in. And I can go through some examples, but it simulates a representative sample. And I'm happy, I think we'll go into some details about representative sampling, but it simulates, and that language is very intentional. It's not the most scientific rigor, which has expense and other factors associated with it. And then the transparencies are you get an automated report after 48 hours. How often you take a survey, you never actually know. I wonder what happened. So you get the immediate of the 48 hours, and then my job is then to put together a summary report, sometimes present that in public meetings, other times quietly publish it to the website. But let's maybe stop and ask some questions. Cindy, do you want to go first?
Um,
Whoop, you just put there you go.
I think I have the same question as Doug, but so I pretty much do all of the flash votes. I've never been aware that I ever registered or that you like do I is it just a one-time thing that I do or do I have to be looking for some place where I log in or something?
So it's a one-time exercise. Once you register to the panel, it's like a Facebook profile. Once you register, you just go to your browser, you go to your app, it loads up, and you're magically like, boy, the computer knows me. So that's the same area. You can actually go to the FlashVote's website, and I'll pull up the URL, but FlashVote / Natick MA, and you can just try to log in with your email account and see if in fact you are a registered individual on the member panel. Here's a fun fact. I can't verify that for you because it's an anonymous panel and I cannot see anything on the back end. My wife says to me every single time, I got your flash vote thing. I think I took this survey. I'm not sure if I'm registered. Can you confirm? And even if you're my wife or my spouse, I cannot confirm. So, but I can walk you through the exact steps.
Thank you.
I actually have 3 questions. Although what you just said might have answered one of them. And one, I think you have an FAQ on this in terms of even if you register, is the actual data of your responses confidential in the sense that you or nobody else can look up and say, well, here's how Doug answered this particular survey. So that's one question. Second question is just semi-silly. I think when I fill these out, it keeps track of how many surveys I've filled out. I think I saw some verbiage about you get so many points. So I want to know, am I ever going to get a prize if I get enough points? And then the last question is fast results. That's really cool. And we often see when we're looking at those results, all of the narrative responses, but there's also this summary. Is that something that you have to physically read as a human, all those things, and come up with summary paragraphs, or are you using AI? Like, how is it? How is the summary of these things synthesized?
Yep. So we'll do the 3 questions in order. So number one is 100% anonymous. So I cannot see any respondents' demographic information at the registration, nor their associated responses for any given survey. Um, as far as the prizes, bad news. You're never going to get a prize. I hate that function. FlashVote does have like a point system where if you respond, they give you some arbitrary value of points and they attempt to gamify it. I wish they would strip it out of the tool because there is no end goal. Um, but I don't know. If you tell me you took every survey last year, stop by town hall and I'll figure out a prize. Um,
I might not want it.
yeah. And then the last one. So yeah, you in that 48 hours, every flash vote survey has a tendency to break down into these 5 questions. The first question is generally just a screening question. I kind of want to get the juices flowing. It helps actually response rate. The first question should be really lightweight, like how long you've lived in Natick. And I will try not to ask that too often because they kind of append that and store that data each time. But the most recent example I'll often do like, do you live in the Johnson neighborhood? If it's a Johnson survey, that allows me to parse the data. Or how often do you visit Natick Center? I've used that quite a bit. So that's a screening question. Question one's questions 2, 3, and 4. That's kind of the meat and potatoes. What is it? What is the hypothesis? What's the insight we're looking to learn? And then the fifth question is an open-ended one. So there's some in questions 2 through 4, there are some where I'll just ask an open-ended response. And question 5 is always open-ended. I am not reading all those responses. Sometimes I will for giggles, but I'm essentially using AI. And anytime there's the 2 reports, FlashVote does the automated 48-hour report. That has like a word cloud and a relatively simplistic view of like the open-ended responses. I'll just use AI when I do the staff summary report and I'll include the link in every instance to show everyone here's, whichever LLM or language learning model, ChatGPT or Anthropic, or Gemini is Google. And I'll include the link so you can see that. But yeah, I'm not reading it. And quite frankly, I think it's a level of trust. I think I don't know, maybe we have some academic and other survey folks on this call, but there comes with a level of trust that the individual who's summarizing it is going to be entirely unbiased. And I think when it comes from a government agency, trust is even more important than if you're doing like, typically if you buy a product or service from someone, they're like, would you recommend this to your friends and family? It's probably unlikely you care if Nabisco or Kraft, macaroni is going to, actually how they're going to position the internal survey. But this is a survey that's fundamental to your sense of belonging, your home, your place, and local government. So there's a lot of emotion associated, and I'll talk about that throughout. So I'm trying to be unbiased with technology.
Good answers. We've got
I'll
2
let you
more
go, Doug.
folks with questions, Brian and then Brinley. Then we'll let you get back to your presentation. Brian?
Yeah, trying to make this quick. Just who initiates these and who picks them apart for the intended mission for it? Is it they're launched with a purpose? And so with me, with the environmental issues and the quality of life, I kind of put in a wordy response offering my insights and you're just sending it off into the ether and you wonder, am I wasting my time by putting, these comments in and specific notice that I might mention the DPW or something like that? Are they contacted and made aware of what the citizens are asking or concerned about?
Yeah, the honest and straight answer to the very end of that is no. We are not taking individual responses and routing them off like a work order system to each department. Now, surveys are fundamentally meant to be aggregated data for and to summarize it. But I would say if you're putting a verbose, well-researched view into a survey, this is not the best venue for that. And I have a slide that I think Brian will help kind of speak further to this. But I think of it as, we're going to make an important decision on what we're going to do and for Natick Center and, sidewalks and bike lanes and things of that sort. all the way down to the mundane, what color are we going to paint the gazebo? And so you might get deeper levels of insights or responses from residents, but this form right now is getting somewhere between 700 and over 1,200 responses in the most recent survey. If you have a particular, hey, Department X, why haven't you pursued topic Y? That feels like an email or a phone call to a department as opposed to a flash vote survey.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Brinley?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to, before we move too far away from it, because I myself ask that question of myself on a regular basis as to whether or not I have answered the survey. I just thought I would mention that the last link that I put in there was the link that Jay was talking about. And if you go to that last link, that's where you can register. And once you've registered, if you go up to the top of that and just log in, it will tell you what surveys are available. So you'll know right away if you've answered one or not, or if there's one open for you to answer. So I just thought I'd say that real quick because I do that a lot. So I just thought I'd share that really quick with everybody.
Thanks, Brinley. All right, back to you, Jay.
I was just looking at it myself, and how would I tell if I had answered one or didn't answer one? I guess.
Did you log in?
Well,
I am logged in.
So you can't tell if if there's not one running right now, it won't say there's a survey for you to answer. So the only way you'll know if you've answered it during the window is during the window.
Okay, but the ones that show up, are those the ones that have all happened, or are those the ones that I responded to?
Those are the ones that all happen. You can go on there and find the results for everything. I'm including on the town. The town, I'm sure
But
Jay's
I
going
can't
to
go
cover
back
that.
and see if I answered all those. I guess that's my question.
Yeah,
yeah, please go for it.
Jay may
Yep.
have the answer.
Yeah, the answer is, Cindy, no. You do not actually have the ability to know which specific surveys you personally responded to. You're just seeing a list of all of the surveys that ran
Got it.
previously.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
But you do get an email when you take the survey. So if you sift back through your emails, you might find, oh, look at that, I did answer this particular survey.
Very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally, though, the beauty of surveys is their aggregated data. So actually, I on some levels, I don't know, does it matter? If you, because like, and I know 48 hours, we'll get into like this notion of 48 hours, that's too short. And we can talk about that. But I think the beauty of FlashVote is fundamentally the simplicity and the fact that you're getting aggregated data that staff and elected officials and appointed officials can consider for action. So I've been on this job for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was a marketing guy. So what is on the right side of the slide, and maybe this slide is for me more than you, but I feel like sometimes we forget that like marketing is like, how do I reach more people and how do I sell more products and services? How do I find those niche audiences and ultimately persuade someone to do something? Very different than my job. Communications are fundamentally like, what is it we need to say? How does it represent all audiences? All audiences. And it's unbiased information fundamentally. So, like, marketing, I think, has a bad name in the world sometimes. So I'll defend it later. But in the sense of communications, it's not editorial. I'm not replacing newspapers. I'm not doing anything along those lines. It's fundamentally to bring as much unbiased information that leads to engagement, potentially participation.
That all audiences ties to something that I'm guessing you'll come to later in your presentation, but if not, I definitely have a question. So I'll let you continue.
Okay. Well, maybe Doug, you kind of led me into this slide. I added this about maybe 4 minutes before, but these are my two least favorite phrases I've heard. I took this job 4 years ago, and this is not aimed, if you know the people that have a tendency to say this, it's not aimed at anyone. But I would basically suggest that these two phrases are two of the more damning phrases you can make. Local government should be accessible, easy, representative. Like those are the words that I think should be, there's a lot of coded language when you talk about a contact sport and you need to show up. That is not what FlashVote is attempting to do. It's attempting to even the playing field, allow casual, informal means. The two phrases I really like on the website's page is it's a non-binding town meeting vote, or and then it's two good phrases. I'll pull them up, but and then it's a ballot question. It's an non-binding ballot question, and then a town meeting vote, but it's meant to represent, but it doesn't actually enact policy. It doesn't make decisions. Um, if it's an important decision at a certain level, that's elected officials. Staff doesn't make those. If it's changing a gazebo paint color, we're not holding a public meeting. We're just getting 800 responses on a survey, and our facilities director is making a fiscally responsible decision on what can be easily maintained and cleaned and make residents and ideally most happy. So there's different levels of decision making, but I just think these phrases are really coded and potentially damaging. Oh, here, let me set up the next slide on here. So I'm going to show you a draft slide that I made earlier today. Um, it's kind of one of those situations where if you guys think about like comedy shows, the good comedian will generally test out the material and try it before they have the big filming for the Netflix special. And then imagine if you look out and you're just trying to test your materials and you see, Lauren Michaels in the audience, some big wig. Well, so we have our select board chair on the call. I happened to bump into her last night, and I mentioned to her, and she said, "I'm excited to join Coffee with a Purpose in here." What I'm going to show you is kind of a draft slide that I intend to bring to the select board at a future date. It has draft written on it, but essentially, I appreciate all the conversations that I have with people about FlashVote and surveys, which I have quite a bit around town. And sometimes people are like, does it matter? How does the select board, use this data? How does it compare to other means of community engagement? It kind of harkens a little bit at Brian's fair question before, which is like, if I give you a really well-structured, informative, open-ended comment, are you routing that to the staff? And it's like, no, we're not. But like, how else do we do that? And how does all these different forms of engagement sit alongside each other? So let me walk you through this slide. I swear it's not nearly as busy as you might think. Essentially, this is a summary table, and it's talking about participating in local government decisions. This is primarily focused on influencing decisions that town staff or the select board makes. So I'm trying to stay away from town meeting or the school committee, it's things of that sort. And then what you have is across left to right, you have different forms of community engagement. And then on the left side, or the y-axis, you have different criteria. What's the role of that community engagement? What's the impact? How much is this information being leveraged? What's the depth? Is it like a quick passing comment or some more nuanced conversation? What's the effort required by the resident or the business owner who lives in our community? And what's some upside? How high is the ceiling for this given community engagement? So I'm not going to read through each of the columns. I feel like this is going to be a backdrop slide where you guys are going to be like, wait a second, answer this question about this column. And that I think that's great. And that's why I built this slide, is to have a healthy conversation. But the survey work, which you can see in the yellow column, I have short and long. Think of FlashVote as a 5 questions short survey. It has limitations. Like I'm not, getting to lengthy, in-depth survey topics. So I'm trying to combine both into one column. Ultimately, I would argue the role of FlashVote is scale and rigor. And I can go into depth about the rigor of previous Natick surveys. Now, number one, I will always kind of reserve the right to be wrong or have structured questions that could have been more refined or better honed. There's always areas of opportunity. But I will also say that our previous survey work, which I've looked extensively into over the last 10 years, I think leaves a lot to be desired. And so I came from an area where, I was always sitting at the table for doing surveys to really big marketing organizations, but I was never the one tasked with it. I managed people, my customer insights team, or different folks who are composing all the surveys. And I can assure you, at least half of you have taken a survey that I've been involved with in past jobs. But there's a lot of rigor. It does build out scale. We're getting between 700, most recently 1,200 responses. In the last 10 years, our median number of survey responses is 500 in Natick. And if you remove the outliers that have direct mail campaigns and other means to juice up some really strong outliers, that number from 500 median drops to about 300. And we're making decisions in our community. And so I think there's scale and rigor. The impact, you can read those are Harvey balls. How full it is, how much black is in each ball suggests more. And if it's empty, it's less. The impact's relatively high for surveys. The depth is about somewhere in the middle. The good news is the effort's minimal. So if you just make a low level of effort, and the upside is high. We have a survey panel. We can build this out to get thousands of responses over time. So I think it's a really interesting tool for all these reasons. But let me stop and maybe answer or have a good conversation around this slide.
Yeah, so Brenly's got her hand up, and then I know I got a question after that.
I just, as we go through this, I've educated myself on a lot of things. And one of the things I think maybe would benefit the group is to talk about what you mean by scale and rigor, because I know that term comes up a lot. And I think sometimes it might be hard to understand that. So I was wondering, I put a definition that I like that from the National Institutes of Health, but maybe you just want to briefly mention what you mean by scale and rigor.
Sure. So it somewhat was embedded in my more long-winded version, but let me give you a punchier response. Scale is, we have 37,000 residents, 29,000 adults 18 plus, 25,000 registered voters, 15,000 households. That's how the Natick 37,000 residents breaks down once you keep going down. And right now, our median number of survey responses in the last 10 years is 500. If you remove the outliers that spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, that number drops to about 300. So the scale is we can get 2 times, 3 times that volume in 48 hours. The rigor is we have the stored demographics on all of those member panel individuals. And that allows us to, if folks are familiar, to do crosstabs where I can look at the responders from question 1 and I can then overlay the variants, the different neighborhoods or different lengths of time they live in town. So the FAQs has a codified definition of some of these items, but that's my response.
So I guess I'll come back to the question I was thinking about before. In the representative sample words on the slide also kind of trigger it. One of the FAQs, it has a question something like, how can a few hundred responses speak for a town of 37,000? And part of the answer in that FAQ leads to actually like a little video with the folks that sell FlashVote about how just statistically, with just a small number of responses, you have a high statistical confidence level that what those few hundred people have said is really what the town as a whole would feel. But in my understanding of statistics, that calls for I'm stumbling over the words, but you know what I'm getting at. What if there's only one constituency or viewpoint that's overrepresented in the small number of people that filled it out versus the full town population? So how do you address that issue of is 300, 500, whatever number of responses truly representative of what the town overall feels? Or are you just getting the folks that say, we love to fill out surveys and here's our opinion about everything?
Yeah. This question was coming some form or fashion, but and the way I would just summarize it, is it truly a representative sample? And if not, please explain it. And I think there's almost like 3 kind of different levels of representation in data and statistics. The gold standard, all the way at the top, is doing probability sampling. And in that instance, you have a known population of people you're looking to represent. In our case, let's consider the 37,000 residents, or more likely the 29,000 adults 18 plus. In that view, you could take the list of 29,000. Let's pretend we had contact information for all 29,000, and every 10th person we would reach out to. And we would do that in a randomized means. And that would theoretically eliminate things like, selection bias and other phrases. That requires you, again, to know everyone's contact information. The realities are we only know people's postal address. So how do you contact people with a postal address? Well, you use the USPS. Well, how much does that cost? And so it gets into a cost equation. Somerville, Cambridge, Austin, Texas, Indianapolis, Indiana, these major metropolitan areas and cities, they use huge direct mail campaigns or sometimes digital advertising to reach that 10th individual and then ultimately understand how does that compare to the total demographics of that population. And so that's probability sampling. The next layer down, I would suggest, is what's sometimes referred to as weighting the scores, or post stratification is a more technical term. And that is after you get all the survey responses, so you didn't randomize them, then you understand what do the responders look like versus the total demographics of the population of 29,000. And you can adjust, weight, or score those metrics, because if you had 65% female demographics, but only 50% are female in our town, you would literally weight that down to make it representative. Now, the language of simulating representative sample, which is what FlashVote does, is that uses primarily the member panel to say that that person didn't have a single interest or a single matter that they're, oh my God, I can't believe we don't do X, or why would we even consider Y? That person has a tendency to enter into a survey panel and respond for that given topic. The member panel, and I'll talk about some of the inherent biases with the member panel, but the member panel is, I want to take surveys in Natick. I'm an engaged resident. And fundamentally, it tends to be more digitally inclined and savvy. It tends to be your more engaged user, and you do have potential concerns with a survey population not being representative of different unheard or marginalized voices, or just people that are busy, that have 2 jobs, 7 kids, and no time. And but I would say that this is the best means available while we go after the ideal state, which is one of 2 things: to just weight and score off total demographics, or run, probabilistic sampling or random sampling. So sorry if that's got a little jargon, but I tried to. But I think this is, the alternative. Again, I go back to the survey work that's been done in this town thus far. We have a topic, we have a project. I'm going to either pay lots of money and use a consultant, or I'm just going to issue a Google form and not ask people to register or sign up or gate, so you can just keep taking the same survey over and over. But I think, it doesn't accomplish true representative sampling, and I would never suggest that. But that's my answer. Any questions? Does that kind of spawn other questions?
Don't see any other hands up. Yeah, thanks for addressing it. I didn't mean to necessarily ask it in the caustic tone that I think it came out as, but it's more like just trying to represent the odd person in town that might say, "Oh, there's no way that this is accurate." So you've provided a lot of context. Thanks.
Other questions, or yeah, Donna?
Donna, you got to come off mute. Oh, there you go. Great.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have well, I'm trying to get over being disappointed that you personally don't read all the comments on this survey. But I get it. I understand it, and I appreciate your explication. But I'm wondering, how do you choose? And I apologize for the dog barking. I have one that's acting like a diva and one that's actually probably dying. So I'm in a state here, but I wonder, how do you determine what is worthy of a flash vote survey? And who determines that? I mean, I think you said somewhere you your contract includes like about 10 of these a year. And do you ever take on like more controversial topics like um, fields, for example, because the town does have jurisdiction over some playing fields. Is there any way of gauging whether residents of Natick want artificial turf fields? Or what about flagpoles? Do people want um, a pride flag flown in front of the town hall also? Or um, do people also want the opportunity that other flags are flown, like for Black History Month, for supporting Gaza, supporting Israel? How do you determine what is worthy of a flash vote and what is not? And both of these, the latter one isn't something that would be talked about at town meeting per se. I don't, but the turf field will when they come for money. And it seems like, well, it could be helpful to have a more general conversation before it gets to that point in town meeting. So who determines the topics for these flash vote surveys?
Yep. So first clarification, I do read every single topic. What I was commenting to is Brian was asking, are you routing those to the individual departments and taking action on each individual comment? That we are not. But no, I'm reading every single comment.
Oh,
So
that's great. That's
and
great.
so when I produce a summary report, it is not an AI output. We're not being replaced by machines in its entirety. It's a starting point for me to be able to put together some summaries. In some cases, pull out some individual comments to be like, boy, what a great idea, big or small. And then, so as far as like, how do you decide flash vote worthy and how do you make those calls? Number one, that's if we get time in this conversation, I want the general public, I want residents, voters, to be able to go out. I do outreach and sit with all our department heads as well as their extended teams. So the reason you got the snow removal survey last 2 weeks ago was because it was a really hard winter and you could just listen to the noise on social media or you could start to quantify it, test some temperature check on given, potential bylaws or policies. So survey who chooses. I'm generally proposing and working with town departments, town administration, elected and appointed officials, and ultimately I'm trying to unlock working with residents. So when you go to the /survey page, so if you go to natickma.gov/survey, the very top is a one question form. Give me a survey idea, turf fields or otherwise. I know, Donna, you also mentioned why not go after some more potentially polarizing or divisive? I forget which phrase you said. I would argue, I think we've done a pretty good job. I think some of the more interesting divisive ones have been around immigration documentation, taking on the Johnson Project, which a lot of people had strong emotions. More recently, the Main Street Improvements Project that had some bike lanes that people have strong opinions. I try to stop short of doing binary yes, no votes and potentially put the select board in a very tough spot. There are select instances where I could see the select board wanting yes, no, and then the select board taking a vote on something. But I think you could imagine a world where it gets tricky where, let's use the Main Street Improvements Project. Boy, that's a complicated project. And I love the fact that we have 5 elected officials that give tens of hours a week to understand the total financials, all the infrastructure needs, all these different items. So when you get into some really nuanced conversation around significant decision making, I think those are where I try to give a little bit of informative data for the select board without pigeonholing them into a yes no side of the equation.
Thanks. Martin?
Yeah, thank you. Jay, a couple questions. I did some basic survey work years ago, and I recall that there are several points of bias that people can accuse surveys of. Each has different importance and different significance. And the one that everybody keeps talking about is the sampling error. Everybody says, well, if we have 35,000 people in Natick and we have a survey that only includes 1,000 people, that can't possibly be representative. when in fact mathematically it is representative. I mean, you can look at the mathematics, and there is a formula that tells you how representative a certain percent, a certain number of thousand survey votes can be. And then a more significant one, in my opinion, is I guess the choosing of the question. What exactly is the question, and what are you trying to get at? And are you asking the question properly in a fair way? And I guess I don't know what that's called, the question error, maybe. And then maybe a third response to both of those, a compromise, which I've always found intriguing, is like a focus group approach where you wouldn't have a formal survey at all, but you'd have a bunch of people sitting in a room, and that probably depends on the number of people as well. You're not going to have three people sitting in a room and ironing out the problems of the world, but there's a certain number of people sitting in a room that are can just talk and come up with some good information. So I guess the question is how much attention do you pay to each of those three possible biases or possible errors?
Yeah. Your first question, and I'm just going to slightly change the language here. Like,
Sure,
is it representative, or how representative is it? The quantification that we do is more around statistical significance. What is the statistical significance percentage, and what's the margin of error? So the statistical significance is like, how confident are you that these results are going to repeat themselves? And the margin of error is, what are the upper and lower bounds that those need to exceed based on that sample size? Every single survey I report has a 95% statistical significance and the equating margin of error. And I can go through an example. So those are two quantifiable things. The examples are like a bag of M&Ms. Once you start drawing, colors out of the M&Ms, once you get a certain number of M&Ms, there you already understand the distribution of each color, and you don't need all 37,000. But I don't want to use the word representation, because that moves into the earlier discussion we had around, probability sampling and different things. Because I'm simulating a representative sample because the member panel was agnostic to the topic, but I'm not making a statement on whether or not it's statistically representative. That would require those other means. Your question around the question error, if you will, or just choosing the verbiage associated with each question. I mean, some of that just comes, here's the process. I try to get survey topics. I mentioned the different parties, residents, department heads, myself, select board, other members. And then I work with the individual topic owner, the DPW on snow removal. And then I, as the communications person, layer on some degree, debatable, some degree of expertise and knowledge on how to compose a survey. And then FlashVote is actually more of a managed service. It's not like a SurveyMonkey is if folks are familiar with like a software as a service, a SaaS. You just log in, you upload your survey question. All the onus is on you. FlashVote actually does a managed service. So they give me feedback rounds and they adjust the phrasing, make sure that each of the questions are each of the responses are mutually exclusive. Do you have an off ramp that says none of the above or unsure? Things of that sort. And then your third question was just somewhat around the notion of a focus group. Yeah, focus groups, I don't think we Natick use them nearly enough. They're in the middle of this slide that you're looking at, and you can see the verbiage there. But yeah, you can do a focus group as a alternative to a survey. You can do it pre-survey, post-survey. But fundamentally, the effort is pretty high. You got to get, some number of people in a room. You got to have a two-way dialogue back and forth, and then summarize that. I truthfully, and I've done focus groups, and I consider myself I don't know, a B minus. But like it's a skill set that you have a facilitator who can suss it out and actually truly synthesize. So I think they're best done by consultants and professionals, but you can do some, modestly informative town ones by town staff or elected, residents. But yeah, focus groups I see as a somewhat alternative or a bolt-on to a survey effort, but not necessarily a direct sort of replacement.
Oh, thank you.
Logistics, well, a two-part thing. One, just in terms of the presentation, this slide's been up for a while, but you did just refer to it. So I don't know whether you have other slides you're going to move on to, or if you're done, we can stop the share. Your choice on that. But a question relative to what questions or topics can surveys be about? There's that expression of never ask a question that you don't want to hear the answer to. And, you know, one might say in general, it's always useful to know the town's opinion on a topic, but there can be a danger in inviting an opinion on something that I don't want to say that they shouldn't influence the decision making on, but it's just kind of immaterial. Like for instance, a ridiculous example, should we fix this fire engine or buy a new one? I think that's the basis of people who really understand what's involved in the repair and the lifespan of fire engines and things like that. It shouldn't be a general town opinion. So, who provides the litmus of you really don't want to just all of a sudden provide a forum for 500 people to say we shouldn't do this when it's not really their call to make.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way I would respond to that is how likely are we to take action? And if we don't need that input to take action, the litmus test I use is really our town administrator. I report to Jamie Erickson, our town administrator. I'll say, boy, this one's going to cause, a little bit of extremes on either side of a given topic. And are we ready to actually make a decision? So, for instance, the snow removal, it actually wasn't really tied to the big winter we had this past winter. I've been wanting to do that one for about 12 months, but we just didn't, we weren't ready necessarily to take action. We had a lot of other competing priorities within the DPW. So that's an example of a nuance. But yeah, I'm generally using the town administrator, or if I feel like I'm about to put the select board in a tough spot, I have worked directly with select board as long as I'm working with two or less people and avoiding open meeting law. It's primarily the chair. I'll say, hey, here's the question composition. I don't do that in all surveys, but if I sense it, that's my litmus test that I'm using one of the folks that are ultimately decision makers. I truthfully haven't made a decision yet in my 4 years. I'm primarily executing and representing department heads.
We'll go to Cindy in just a second, but just one quick follow-up on the snow removal. I've spaced and didn't take that one myself, but Sarah, I think you were telling me there were like 1,200 responses. Do you use the metric of how many people responded in some way of, wow, this really touched a nerve, or this matters to people or not?
Absolutely. So the way you have that is you have the response rate. We ultimately look at what were the total number of the member panel when we initially deployed the survey, and what percentage of, let's just use whole numbers, and to say the survey panel was 1,500, and we got 1,000 responses. Boy, 66% response rate. So typically, 50% is our baseline norm, and we pretty much have hit that in every instance. The average municipal survey that has a member panel of this sort is going to be in the neighborhood of like 20 to 40% as a benchmark. So Natick has historically done really well. Now you have people that are registering burner email accounts, or they're coming into the member panel because they really hate or they love that given topic. Those individuals will have a tendency to subside over time, but they'll still be a registered member panel. So over time, the maturity of your member panel, you'll typically see that net out and be near the 50%. But yeah, that's a huge metric. Actually, off the top of my head, you referenced 1,200. That was actually the Main Street Improvement Survey we just did, not the snow removal. And snow removal was 1,200. Yeah, sorry, apologies. That one on the response rate, I actually haven't looked. I haven't actually produced my summary report. I'm meeting internally this week with our DPW team because I don't want to go to the general public and present my insights and our actions because I don't own that. I'm like a support staff in that. But yeah, generally speaking, response rate is a great indicator to say, boy, we really hit a nerve, or people are really energetic to give us an opinion on this particular matter.
Well, Cindy?
Yeah, just picking up where Martin was asking about forum, I think I've heard that there have been workshops like about Johnson and public meeting. I've heard about those. Focus group. how 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 do you get people to be in a focus group that are different from, or maybe they are the same, who would answer a flash vote?
Yeah, it's not going to surprise you. Targeted outreach is like so. I'm part of a grant program through the state. Is it's around municipal vulnerability preparedness and like sustainability and climate resilience. And you might hear us in this particular instance, we get what we deem a community liaison. So we're reaching out, we're trying to find someone who's a senior, someone that represents the West Native community, someone that has a non-white racial minority. And this is where, yeah, it's relationships and doing targeted outreach. Um, the focus groups, it's a laborious one for all parties involved, staff and for but it's an important one. And it's like I said, I don't think we're doing enough of it. And while I have the microphone and speaking to some of this, I feel like sometimes I'll see the social media chatter to be like, boy, are we if we send an email to the select board, does it matter? Are they listening to us on social media? Is that making an impact? And I think like, I mean, social media has its own challenges, and I'm not going to go into depth there. But like, think of the email into the select board. If it's a templated copy and paste that the select board receives 20 of in less than X number of hours, I don't know. That's probably less valuable than that well-researched, articulated example of that personal lived experience. I'm having this issue, and this is my personal experience. I think that absolutely can make an impact, and the select board will make the decision. But like that's a single individual. So then you have to weigh that against the aggregated data of a survey. And ultimately everything counts to a degree. This impact row, again, this is a draft version. The select board should ultimately be the individuals to decide how full that circle should be. Because I think you, the residents, should be most interested in knowing like, what does it mean? How do they compare? So this is an oversimplified slide as a backdrop. But yeah, the focus groups is really interesting. I think it's laborious and I think we need to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Being the people that write focused input, Brian, get your hand up.
Communication, I think, is what you're working on, and my focus is kind of tangible results of that communication. And using C-Click-Fix as a tool, I think is a great possibility, but my experiences with it is very confusing, and you're sending stuff off into the net that you don't get any reply back from. And so you mentioned that, or if I mentioned that there's a big pile of broken plastic on the side of Route 30, uh, it just goes out and you never know what happens to it. Or once in a while you may get some response, but I think it's a great tool, and that should be kind of brought into if it's an issue that the DPW could address, maybe dropped right in their lap. And I'm assuming that that happens. But I would like to get your instructions on how to be most impactful with that tool, C-Click-Fix.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of adjacent or unrelated to the flash vote, but it's absolutely
Well, it's the town, that's where we're trying to be helpful, and we're doing a lot of volunteer work and moving a lot of trash. We see a lot of stuff that other people don't see. And we think that our voice ought to be heard. And when we send it to C-Click-Fix, it just feels like it disappears, and it isn't addressed a lot of times. And that kind of is not very productive from our point of view.
I don't disagree with you that it's a great tool and it's a great means to, ultimately communicate to the DW, fire, LF&R, like
Gotcha.
engineering departments.
If
I don't have a direct role with that. Like that's ultimately that tool is essentially a means not to place a work order to say, hey, Department X, go do Y, but it's a means for them to receive it. So it's a better question for the DPW and other staff that leverages that.
Sounds
And
like
just a quick throw in, how can you differentiate between Wayland and Natick? Do you have to log into a different account, or does it pull them apart on
Are you,
different communities?
you're talking about like registering for FlashVote in Natick or Wayland?
No, I'm talking about C-Click-Fix. When you see stuff on the roadway or in the parkland, if you happen to be in Natick, it's one thing, and happen, in at Wayland, you have to have two different accounts.
again, I don't know that answer, so I'm not
Okay.
directly involved with that tool. It's a great question.
Yeah.
But I've done some ad hoc work to help them route some of the requests in different areas, but it's just not an area that I personally work on.
I
Would it
think
be
we would love to get
Thank
a
you.
DPW guy on as a speaker at some
so
point.
C-click
I
fixes
did. I
with
will res- I
DPW
read
fix?
it.
Debbie,
All right.
Sorry,
Rick?
need to find
Yeah,
who's speaking here.
yeah, it's Rick. And can I just give a very quick answer to Brian because I'm standing over the site right now on the common where I sent in a C quick fix at the end of last week. It's already fixed. Okay. And I saw when you do it, you put in the address of it, on the coordinates, it gives you an exact, you can move it to exactly where it is, and then it will tell you if there have been other complaints about that already. So if you're the first complaint or the second complaint if it hasn't been handled or whatever. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you. I put some other questions in the chat for Jay, or one other question in the chat, but I'll go mute again because I'm in town and it's noisy. Bye. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, and I don't want to derail this conversation to the C-click fix. It is absolutely a valid question and topic, but it's not Jay's purview, so we won't really address that here. Pat? Yeah, you got to come off mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Following up on Brian's questions and concerns, Brian and I work a lot together. Anyway, we're finding that there's a certain amount of siloing or something, and that when we deal with government, Natick, official government, for example, we have some areas, I call them rogue areas. Several people on this screen know what I'm talking about. There are areas of town that DPW doesn't really get involved with, and they're tough. They're called rogue waterfronts around Dug Pond and maybe even Lake Cochituate. And then there are these areas that are conflicted ownership or responsibility. Maybe the worst example would be the area that the kids use for the jumps, the sport biking area along Middlesex Path. And we've been trying to ring the bell and get the town's attention on that area for years. And it's MBTA property, but then it's managed and it's supposed to be managed by Concom because it's adjacent to the trails. There's so many, it's DCR, sometimes, especially Pegan Cove Park is kind of DCR, and Claire has to negotiate with them, and they're really tough to deal with. So we get into these confusing situations, who's responsible for what, and nobody seems to be able to get the sides to work together. There were kids in the sport bike area over a year ago were not only trashing the place, but they were lighting fires, and it was heavy drought, like it is now, level 3 drought. There were 300 square foot burn scars in the woods, 30, 35 foot burn scars going up the trees. There's a tough crowd in there. And I took all the photos down to the Natick Fire and the Natick Police and, asked them to kind of see what you can do to get involved. And very little happened. We just don't know sometimes, the Keep Natick Beautiful's out there, trying to dig away at some of these tough areas, but we're not getting the kind of coordinated response that we'd like to see from the town. So I don't know exactly what to do about that.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, Pat, but again, like I don't have purview over that. And like I would ultimately say if another department comes in here to talk about how to do better trash pickup and they start deviating to how to do communications in the town, shame on them. But I don't have a great answer. I know, Pat, I've joined some of your guys' quarterly meetings and I've given you some thoughts for you guys to consider on how to approach, DPW, different departments. But like, ultimately, I just personally don't have oversight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the generic communications question there is just any resident has a concern about any aspect of town, how do they make their voice best heard? And that at the high level is a communications question, I think. So
I would direct you to the column that says direct email that's personal. The role that you just described is a personal one. And ultimately the direct email most often goes to the select board, your representative, elected officials. So that's my response there. It's like truly, if it's something personal in nature and I'm not getting the traction with staff, accountability ultimately rolls through representation of elected officials.
yeah,
May
I
I
know
just,
Catherine's listening really just as a resident this morning, but
yeah,
perhaps
I think
we
she
could
had to
follow
leave.
up.
Well, but
Okay.
I guess
But
that's the point of maybe trying to move us back towards FlashVote.
Yes. Yeah. Bill, let's go to your question.
Well,
This
I
is
just had a follow-up to Brian and your conversation around see quick fix. And again, it's not critical at all, but the fact that you can put something in and not get a response to me is a communication issue. Yes, I know it's not in your department, but you could encourage or recommend that the process be changed so that there's feedback to the person who provides the information. And again, not directly in your area, but if you're in meetings with whoever manages that piece, it's really helpful, I think, from a citizen point of view, if you know that your question has been received and maybe even resolved or unable to resolve. And again, that's not your department, but I would hope you'd have some input in that. So thanks. And I have to run. Thanks, Jay, for coming. Really appreciate your presentation.
any final comment about that, Jay? But I know we're trying to stay focused on the survey tools. But um, this has been heard. Oh, Lane was just saying that he's got to leave as well. Oh, Catherine does have her hand up. So, Catherine, did you want to weigh in on this? I got to come off mute.
So, what I would say is send an email to selectboard@natickma.org about C whatever, fix Quicket, trash at Pekin Cove, whatever issue you have, and let's focus on FlashVote because we have a lot of questions that come into Select Board about FlashVote. It'd be great to have a Coffee with a Purpose recording with Jay talking about what it does, what it doesn't do, and how it informs our opinion as a Select Board member.
Okay. And based on that, I won't go into that. Well, I can potentially edit this recording. Oh, but let's get back, yes, to FlashVote. Jay, I know at one point you were suggesting that you would like input on what topics
So
people.
these are future slides that I might do at some point for a select board meeting. I'm just going to go briefly. And then Doug, where you're going, ultimately, we just reviewed a lot of the content that's on the town's website. But my motivation coming here, the last part to what Doug was just hinting at is you guys asked a good question, which is where do you get survey topics from? And the majority is our elected officials, appointed officials, town staff. But if you, the residents, right now have conversations around, hey, why haven't you looked into X topic? Now, the criteria to think about, does it fit within the confines of a 5-question survey? And you wouldn't know this, but we'll figure out if we town staff are operationally ready to be able to take action. But here's a quick org chart that maybe would prompt you to be like, wow, look at all those departments. Why aren't you asking questions about from this department? But I'm just leaving this in the background for folks but I'd love to hear from you as far as, and I guess the only brief thing I'll do to give you one quick view of this page. On the front of this page is basically asking in perpetuity for survey ideas. The text right here, have a idea for a future survey, submit your topic, as well as this graphic over here that says survey idea, click here, brings you to a simple 2-question survey. Do you have a potential topic or idea? And then open-ended feedback. Do you want more context or detail about, or sorry, do you want to provide more detail or context on your survey idea, or do you have additional feedback or questions? But ultimately, I would love to hear from you guys as to why haven't you asked about X?
So just a nit, but there was a typo on it was submit you idea, not your idea. Something you might want to fix at some point. I guess relevant to the recent discussion, a great survey topic would be, have you ever used CWAP and what's been your experience with it? However you would do those questions 2 through 4. That would be one suggestion. But to your litmus, though, subject to discussions with the DPW, are you prepared to, do you want this input and what would you be planning to do with it and so forth? What other topics do people have suggestions for? I know Donna was mentioning turf fields. I know that's a hot topic for many of us. I'm sorry, Martin, who's got his hand up?
Yeah, I do. It's not really on topic. It's not on general topics, more on the process, if this is okay. So I've spent in the early years, I'm not in the greatest health right now, so I haven't been following the town process as much as I'd like. But in a year or two ago, I was following it very carefully, and what I noticed was most of the controversial and sort of key decision topics that were circulating in the town were going to the select board for decision making and information gathering, and that includes the dam, which I was on the advisory committee for that one. The RFP Auburn Street RFP study committee is also on the advisory committee for that, and also topics that just popped up out of seemingly nowhere, like the immigration controversy. And those were all really managed by the select board. And then all of a sudden, it seemed to me at least, there was a major topic in town, which was kind of the big topic in town, which was the Johnson School. And that became the big discussion topic. And Jay became as far as I can tell, he was the one in charge of managing that discussion process, organizing the process, gathering people together, organizing materials and so forth and so on. So I'm really, first of all, want to applaud Jay for all he did on that rather complex organization process, but also is that kind of a trend to have Jay be the kind of in the forefront of public outreach, or is this sort of just in addition to the normal select board process? And I don't know if I'm asking all the right sub questions, but I'm just curious about Jay's role in that rather elaborate Johnson School process.
Yeah, it's a great question, Martin, and I think we don't have a definitive answer as to what my role could be. I would say it was funny when I got started with the Johnson project. Essentially, we didn't have. I'm sorry, you guys getting that feedback or?
Yeah, I was just muting someone. Trying again.
But I would say during the 5 Auburn and the dam project, I was not in my position. I actually just started after those 2 decisions. And then when I got started in the Johnson project, people would say, why didn't we do a flash vote project or flash vote survey in different areas? I'm extremely complimentary of what not only the dam advisory committee, but kind of like they had a consultant who helped with the engagement, and then the staff was pretty active on that the advisory committee on the dam project. I think that's kind of like the gold standard. And I think that required, I forget the exact number of folks and then they have to join and they have to go through, the realities of public meetings. So I don't know if it's the most efficient means from like a project management standpoint. So I'm optimistic that once a project reaches a certain tier, I can play that role, and my job title, can stay communications director, but I'm ultimately doing more than communications. It's just process management and engagement. Um, but I would tell you that it's likely to become the norm, but not really codified or firm yet. Um, and I think I just have to be cognizant of my capacity and time. In the case of Johnson, we knew that, the Parks and Rec team had some turnover and capacity limitations, and it was primarily engagement so early in that project that had a lot of raw emotions to a school closure. And I happen to be a Johnson parent. So the town administrator says, "Hey, you willing to take the lead on this?" And I think that kind of, are you going to be okay with your neighbors? And so far so good. But I think that is an interesting blueprint and something I would love to continue to do, but I think it's subject to be finalized.
Thanks. Martin, I had muted you, but you just got to come off mute again if you want to reply to that. Oh, one more time. There you go.
Yeah, no, just commenting that I thought I was unmuted, but yeah, that was a fascinating process that showed a whole lot of things in public engagement that we pretty much hadn't really seen that clearly before in some of the other controversial issues. And I think we have to all admit that this town works on controversy. There's always something going on that gets people all excited, either pro or con. And I think the fact that we've come up with some good ways to manage that is really to be commended.
Yeah, yeah. To engage citizenry. Cindy had her hand up and put it down. Catherine had her hand up and put it down. I'll name check them if either one of them do want to come off mute and ask.
I took my hand down because I forgot, but then I remembered there was a slide one or two back, and you went over it like in 2 seconds, and it had like three things on it before this one. Yeah. Was there something you wanted to say about this one?
No, these are just future materials, and I just wanted to, I thought someone was going to say, I just want to see pros and cons, or what's the roadmap of FlashVote? What are we trying to get to? So I think when I bring these materials to the select board, these are future slides I would produce.
Okay.
Thanks.
Could you talk about where you think it might go?
I'd rather hold off until I can codify my thoughts.
Sure.
This was a chance, and it's a great question, Cindy. And yes, in due time, not many months, just a few months.
Thank you.
Great. I will mention that Rick had put in the chat a possible survey topic is asking people about communications with the town and how responsive they find the town to be or not. Catherine, your hand is now back up.
A couple of things. So people ask select board members, I'll speak for me only. What role does FlashVote play in how you decide what you're going to do, whether it's snow removal or bike lanes or, like what role does it play? And I'd say there's about 15 different inputs that we take. And I'm basing this on conversations with my peers and former select board members, but speaking for me only, my 30-minute meetings with constituents. So those are about 10 to 15 a week where somebody says, hey, I want to talk to you about the flooding on Kitchewit Road, or I want to talk to you about the dam, or I want to talk to you about Johnson School, or whatever that is. So that's one. Emails, we all read all of the emails. Every email that comes into the board. The chair, because of custom, responds to every one of them. Phone calls. So phone calls come into Billy Walsh at the select board office, town administrator's office. He writes memos, he sends them to us. We get letters. We actually get letters with stamps on them. We have forums. So Jay has been invaluable in upping the communication aspect of the relationships between the residents, business owners, and the select board. We didn't have him for 5 Auburn Street. And so when we talk about like controversial things, since anything that has to do with what the town owns, so the town owns the dam, the town owns 5 Auburn, the town owns Johnson School, the town is also, select board are also the road and the roadway commissioners. So when it comes to anything to do with roads and signage, That's us. We're the water and sewer commissioners. We're the cemetery commissioners. So there's a whole bunch of responsibilities that come to us by MGL. And having Jay on board to kind of distill, manage, and give us more input or organize communications has been so incredibly important. So for Johnson, I really wish the board had had the level and types of organized input that we had for, or that we have for Johnson. We didn't. For the dam, we did have an 18-month, very intensive public engagement process, but we didn't have a lot of the tools that Jay has brought to the town. So for those of you who are curious about, hey, what's going on in Coquitchuit Street with all the flooding, or why do we have so much construction on Speen Street, or when are we going to get, Speen Street, or I mean on Mill Street, when are we going to get Speen Street remilled and organized, or what about this pothole? Please write to selectboard@natickma.org. We do read everything. We farm stuff off to departments. We respond to everything. So that's all I wanted to say about communications.
Thanks. Thanks, Catherine. Sarah.
Yeah, I guess this kind of echoes some of what Catherine just said. So I'm on the Community Preservation Committee, and there was a flash vote survey that was done when we were preparing our community preservation plan. And again, it was one tool out of many things that we used. So we didn't just take the input of people saying, oh, we think all the CPA money should go to this or that, but it was a piece. And we had focus groups and we sent a mailing to the town and we held public meetings. So we did a lot of different things, but it was helpful. It was a helpful tool and piece of the puzzle that we used as we prepared that plan.
Yeah. So there's never just one solution that works for everything, which is probably why Jay has backed up to this slide here, because it's more of a umbrella, different strokes, different folks. Cool. We're approaching 10:30 here, but do other folks or folks have topics for other potential surveys, which I think was one of the things Jay was definitely looking for input on. Maybe we're all tuckered out.
Yeah, no worries. And I guess you can see on the bottom right the feature topics. We did snow removal, but those are some others that are in the queue. The budget process to somewhat give visibility, but get input on how we set our town's budget. Local government input, that's been requested. That'll be tricky because you have lots of competing interests and parties. Hidden gems could be to give more visibility. I mean, what percentage of Natick residents do you truly think knows about the organic farm, the Sassamon Trace, the Library of Things? So sometimes we do things to garner some awareness, but also get some feedback. Programming, whether it be the Community Senior Center, the Morse Institute Library, the Bacon Free Library, the Parks and Rec, they do a lot of programming. So I think getting some input and feedback on that would be great. I absolutely took down C-Click-Fix. I will talk. It's not a DPW tool, but they're the primary users. NPD, engineering, some other departments use it. But I'll talk with those folks as well as the turf field. We have that advisory committee in place, and I have an email thread with them currently. So I offer myself up as a survey proponent, if you will, and ultimately to help compose it. But I'll say to them, what is it you want to learn? And are you operationally ready to, consider this input? But yeah, any topics that come after the fact, I mean, just go to that single web page and submit a topic. I'll use like our homepage and our social media to get more than just the 15 or so folks on the Coffee with a Purpose. But the good news is you folks know another 15 who know another 15. So I think when we started FlashVote, the very first survey received just over 400 people, and we had a survey panel of just under 600. And that's now up to 1,500 on the survey panel. I think my ballpark, big, hairy, audacious goal, if folks are familiar with BHAGs, if I got 3,000 people, that would be about 10 percentage points of adults, or 2,500 people on the panel would be 10% of registered voters. Our local election this past March had the number one churn out of any candidate or body that was voted on was 2,400. We had 2,400 registered voters who made it. So, that's a much more rigorous process. You're a registered voter, as opposed to FlashVote. You register to an online panel. So I'm not comparing the two, but I think it gives me a good proxy to say, if people come out to make the most important thing, which is our local elections, can I just in 48 hours, 10 or 12 times a year, get a similar sort of turnout?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, really good. Let's close out with Kathleen's question, and then we can go to current events. Kathleen?
Yeah, I just had a quick thought here, and I haven't been on the member panel for all of the surveys, so you may have done this already, but talking today about communication issues, it's pretty much all the conversation has been about how do residents get their thoughts, questions, opinions to town and town department and select board. But going the other way with communication, how does the town get information out to residents? I think you can ask people, well, what will they read? How do they want to be reached? And I know people say things and maybe they don't really do those things or follow through on them, but I think that's a good area to poke at. And a case in point, I live in a neighborhood in East Natick where there's a lot of new big houses that went up, a lot of tear downs, a lot of new residents who been here 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And I'm not really sure how connected they are with the town. And when something comes along like water restrictions, I think they just don't know about them. And I can tell you, I walk early in the morning and I'm seeing all these new houses with their sprinklers running every morning, even though we are in a water, stage 3, level 3 drought. So I think that's just a tiny example of one piece of information that I think a lot of people didn't receive, don't know. And I'd love to see us as a town poke at how do we connect better with the residents, as well as all the discussion about how to help the residents connect with us.
I love where you're going, but Kathleen, do you mind if I just ask a clarifying question? Because
Sure.
So this survey you're looking at, I know actually, I think it was Rick who was online, was like, do a communications one. This is a communications one we did about 3 or 4 months ago. And I totally appreciate the spirit of what you're saying is the residents, can tell you how I want to receive update.
Yeah.
But then you're kind of asking a little bit of the inverse on like how we do our outreach. But since I'm doing surveys in FlashVote to residents, how might you suggest that the phrasing of this question would be kind of the inverse, or how would it shift? Because I guess my point is, like, we know operationally our communication channels, and we know we're not reaching everyone about every topic and can constantly do better. But this is asking people how they prefer to receive it. That's this question. I guess might be the other phrasing?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you've probably phrased it as well as possible. So maybe it's a case, if this survey was done so recently, and again, I haven't done all of them, maybe it's a question of what did we do with this information? Can we, like, the next thing coming up, let's go back to here and be sure that we are, prioritizing whatever the preferred method, that came back. So maybe it's more, not that we haven't asked the question, but then what are we doing with that information, and how do we track, whether there's an impact because we've shifted a little bit how we reach out to people.
Yeah, and Doug, I'll hand it back to you so you can do the updates or community events. But yeah, Kathleen, I think it's a great point. I didn't get a chance, and I'm going to bastardize this and go way too fast. But essentially, every time we issue a survey, I include the survey title, what a brief description is, and then I'll produce what I call these summary reports, and I try to list the actions because it's the value exchange. If you take the survey, we take the action, and then you show up at a higher rate, you tell your friends and family. So as I scroll through here, you can see I do a decent hit rate to get out a summary report and give you a sense of what findings or actions. And then in some cases, I just have a backlog of my time to do the work. And so local businesses was done in November of last year. February is when we did the communications. I yet haven't released this report. And to full disclosure, I'm actually prioritizing the snow removal just because it's a hot topic, but I need to get back to the local businesses and communications, publish the report, and then hopefully give you the residents some confidence to say, okay, they made some actions because of this communication survey. And each time we get 2% better and hopefully close that gap of uninformed residents.
And I think a piece of it again is the town communicating well with its own department heads what it learned and encouraging them. DPW, the best way to reach residents is to do this. So maybe there's that little step in there that we need to be sure happens, even as you're being really good with communicating with people who've taken the survey or other residents what the results were. Is the town staff getting the results too and acting on them?
Yeah, no, that's key. And that actually is happening when I produce those. We have biweekly department heads and I share the results so it's maybe not quite as precise as Brian's earlier question to say, are you routing the, things, but I am at an aggregated level doing it. But that's a great point.
Yeah, that's good perspective. For some reason, maybe because we're approaching the 250th birthday and that we have striving for a more perfect union, it seems like communications is such a monster topic. It's very similar. We will never, almost by definition, have a perfect communications system that accurately reaches everyone or tracks feedback from everyone, but we can keep implementing new aspects to get better and better. So Jay, thanks very much for spending the time with us this morning, focusing as much as possible on the flash vote. Obviously, we bled into other topics. I can work with you later to see if there's a curated version of the video session. We'll probably put the full one up on our own channel, but perhaps there's another video that could be produced too that focuses just on those elements. Thanks again for spending the time with us. We usually close out with kind of current events. Often Brinley kind of leads that, although obviously anything that anyone else knows that's going on, it's a good time to bring it up. So I'll turn to Brinley first, though. Brinley, anything that you'd like us to know about coming up?
I would say there's two big things for me on the agenda. One is Wednesday, is a select board meeting again. And this Wednesday, there will be an update on Main Street, and they will be talking about and releasing the study that was done for townwide for trash and recycling. And I know that that's a big one for a lot of us. So I wanted everybody to know that. And then again, next Monday, I think, is probably the biggest school committee one that people can participate in and be a part of. They will be discussing Memorial and the pre-K situation in town as a whole. I think I've mentioned this before. They will be making a multi-generational decision about what to do with pre-K as part of the educational program that goes with Memorial. There were several options, one of which was to put all 10 units, all 10 sections of pre-K down at Memorial. I do think that, we all spend money in town, and it's all our tax dollars, and everybody likes to talk about traffic. So I think that it would be a really great select school committee meeting for everybody to pay attention to next week.
Thanks for that, Brinley. Appreciate that. Anything else anybody would like to bring to our attention? I'll just mention next week is the Monday before Juneteenth. So you'll see on the calendar our featured speaker is Deborah Mitchell. I think she's going to bring her friend, possibly relative, I'm not sure, Linda Wade. They will be talking about the Voting Rights Act, but I'm sure we'll also talk about other topics as well. Not seeing any hands raised, so perhaps we're ready to go on with our day and week. Oh,
I just remembered one last one. On Sunday is the farm fun run at the community farm, and that is really a blast. If anybody would like to, oh, sorry, I posted it wrong. Hold on, I'm working on the link again. It's so much fun. It's not like a race. It's just literally a fun run. Oh, for some reason the link is not coming through. I'm gonna keep working on that. Yeah, you can just go and hang out if you want. It's a beautiful place to go. You can check out the farm while it's happening. It's a great fundraiser for the farm. So I think I got it this time. There you go.
Great.
It's in there. It starts on at 8, 9. Hold on.
Well, you're looking that up.
I should know this, but
Cindy's got her hand
Yeah,
up.
I put it in the chat. Just to clarify, if the DPW doesn't manage C-Click Fix, who is running that?
I was suggesting that it's not solely them.
Okay.
The software is housed within the DPW department,
Okay.
but many departments leverage it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, Cindy, I'm pretty sure because I've asked this question to them directly before. The questions get distributed to the departments that they're relevant to. So if something comes in for buildings, it goes to buildings. If something comes in for roads, it goes to roads. If something comes in for the select board, if something comes in for town administration, or it gets diverted to the department that needs to handle that question.
I will say from my experience with it, they do respond pretty quickly the times we've put stuff into it.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Again, thanks, Jay. Come back anytime.
Yeah,
Or even just as a participant, right? Enjoy the day and the week, everyone, and we will see you next Monday.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone. Thank you, Jay.